The persistent autumn rain seemed to wash away all evidence of summer from the sprawling Oxfordshire countryside, rendering the sprawling Oakley estate a sombre tableau of grey stone and muted verdure. Miss Penelope James stood frozen in the grand entrance hall of Thornfield Manor, her threadbare cloak dripping onto the marble floor as a stern-faced housekeeper assessed her with undisguised skepticism. His Grace expects his children's governess to maintain the highest standards of deportment, Mrs. Winters declared, her eyes sweeping critically over Penelope's humble attire. I trust you understand the privilege of serving in such an esteemed household. Indeed, I am most grateful for the opportunity, Penelope replied, carefully modulating her voice to sound less refined than her upbringing had cultivated. She unconsciously twisted the silver ring on her right hand, a delicate band with an unusual crest, before tucking it beneath her glove when she noticed the housekeeper's gaze lingering upon it. The Duke of Westmoreland rarely involves himself with the children's education, Mrs. Winters continued as she led Penelope up the grand staircase. His Grace has been in perpetual mourning since the passing of the Duchess for years prior. You shall primarily report to me regarding the young Lord Edward and Lady Sophia. Penelope nodded, her heart pounding against her ribs. This deception must endure, she reminded herself. A governess I shall be, for a governess I must remain. The alternative, returning to London where creditors and scandal awaited, was unthinkable. The chambers assigned to her were modest but comfortable, a vast improvement from the cramped attic room she had shared with 3 other seamstresses in the months since her father's death had left her destitute. As she unpacked her meagre possessions, Penelope allowed herself a moment of reflection before the small looking-glass. At 23, her porcelain complexion remained unmarred despite the hardships of recent months, her auburn hair still thick and lustrous even when severely pinned beneath her cap. The grey governess dress did little to flatter her figure, but that was precisely the intention, to fade into the background, to become invisible to society's prying eyes. Lady Penelope James would never be recognized in such attire, she whispered to her reflection, her voice trembling slightly. Lady Penelope James is dead. There is only Miss James now. She removed her glove to gaze upon her mother's ring, the last tangible connection to her former life. The Jameson family crest, an eagle with wings outstretched above 3 stars, glinted in the fading daylight. Sentiment compelled her to keep it, though prudence warned against such folly. With a sigh, she slipped it back onto her finger. Some comforts, she decided, were worth the risk. The first fortnight at Thornfield passed without incident. Young Lord Edward, a precocious boy of 8, proved to be an eager scholar with a mischievous streak that Penelope found endearing rather than vexing. Lady Sophia, barely 6, was a solemn, observant child who blossomed under Penelope's gentle instruction. By the 3rd week, Penelope found herself settling into a routine that, while humbling compared to her previous station, offered unexpected contentment. "Miss James, you must come quickly," Lady Sophia exclaimed one rainy afternoon, bursting into the schoolroom with unusual animation. "Father has returned from London." Penelope's hands froze over the geography lesson she had been preparing. In nearly a month at Thornfield, she had yet to encounter the Duke of Westmoreland. His absence had been a blessing, allowing her to establish herself without scrutiny from the master of the house. "Compose yourself, Lady Sophia," Penelope admonished gently, rising to her feet. "A proper lady does not rush about in excitement." "But father has brought gifts," the child protested, her eyes bright with anticipation. "And he wishes to see us immediately in the drawing-room." Penelope smoothed her plain dress and adjusted her cap. "Then we shall not keep his Grace waiting." The grand drawing-room was awash with afternoon light despite the rain, its elegance a stark reminder of the world Penelope had left behind. She kept her eyes downcast as she followed the children into the room, determined to remain as unobtrusive as possible. "Ah, here are my treasures," a deep voice announced warmly. The Duke of Westmoreland stood before the fireplace, his tall figure outlined by the dancing flames. At 35, Ethan Oakley remained one of England's most eligible widowers, a fact not lost on the matrimonial-minded mothers throughout London society. His commanding presence was tempered by the genuine smile that transformed his face as he knelt to embrace his children. "And this must be the new governess who has so thoroughly captivated my offspring," he remarked, rising to his full height. "Mrs. Winters speaks highly of your methods, miss." The words died on his lips as his gaze settled upon Penelope. She felt the blood drain from her face as recognition dawned in his eyes, those penetrating grey eyes she remembered all too well from London ballrooms and garden parties that now seemed a lifetime ago. "Miss James, your Grace," she supplied hastily, cursing her trembling voice as she dropped into a respectful curtsy, keeping her gaze firmly fixed on the oriental carpet. "Miss James," he repeated slowly, the name clearly foreign on his tongue. "How fortuitous that you have joined our household." Something in his tone, a note of disbelief, perhaps even accusation, sent a chill down Penelope's spine. She risked a glance upward to find him studying her with unsettling intensity. "The children have made remarkable progress under your tutelage," he continued, his expression inscrutable. "I would hear more about your background. Perhaps you might join me for tea tomorrow afternoon after the children's lessons." It was not a request but a command, elegantly disguised. Penelope felt trapped, cornered like a fox before hounds. "As your Grace wishes," she murmured, her heart pounding so loudly she feared the entire room could hear it. As the children eagerly unwrapped their gifts, the Duke's attention remained fixed upon Penelope's right hand, where her mother's ring glinted traitorously in the firelight. She tucked it into the folds of her dress, but the damage was done. The subtle narrowing of his eyes confirmed her worst fear. He had recognized the Jameson crest. Sleep eluded Penelope that night. She paced her small chamber, alternative explanations and excuses forming and dissolving in her mind like morning mist. By dawn, she had resolved to face the Duke with as much dignity as her false position allowed. If dismissal awaited her, she would accept it with grace, though the prospect of returning to London's grinding poverty filled her with dread. The afternoon arrived with merciless swiftness. Penelope found herself seated opposite the Duke in his private study, a room whose masculine elegance reflected its owner's refined taste. The tea remained untouched between them. "I find myself in an unusual predicament, Miss James," the Duke began, his tone measured. "I had believed Lady Penelope Jameson had retreated to her family's estate in Devonshire following Lord Jameson's unfortunate passing last winter." Penelope's fingers tightened around the delicate teacup. "Your Grace is mistaken. I am simply Miss James, formerly employed by the Harrington family in Kent." "Indeed?" His eyebrow arched skeptically as he leaned forward. "Then perhaps you might explain how a simple governess came to possess a ring bearing the Jameson family crest, a ring I distinctly remember seeing on Lady Penelope's hand at the Duchess of Richmond's ball 2 seasons ago." The silence stretched between them, taut as a violin string. Penelope set down her cup, its gentle click against the saucer unnaturally loud in the quiet room. "The ring was a gift," she offered weakly. "From Lady Penelope herself, I suppose." His smile held no humor. "A remarkable coincidence that you bear such a striking resemblance to her as well." Defeat settled over Penelope like a shroud. "What do you intend to do, Your Grace? Dismiss me? Expose me to society's ridicule?" The Duke studied her for a long moment. "I am more interested in understanding why the daughter of one of England's most respected earls is masquerading as a governess in my household. The truth, if you please, Lady Penelope." Her carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of his direct address. "My father left nothing but debts," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. the estate was entailed to a distant cousin who had no interest in supporting my father's disgraced daughter. After the scandal. Ah, yes. The broken engagement to Lord Hartley. The Duke's expression softened marginally. A most unfortunate business. He discovered my father's financial ruin before I did, Penelope continued, bitterness seeping into her voice. His letter of dissolution arrived the same day as the creditors. The Morning Post was most creative in their speculation about my mysterious disappearance from society. And so the Earl's daughter became a governess. After 3 months as a seamstress in a Covent Garden shop, she corrected him. I discovered I have little talent with a needle, but my education proved marketable. Your advertisement seemed providential. The Duke rose and moved to the window, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the afternoon light. You have shown remarkable resourcefulness, Lady Penelope. Many in your position would have sought an advantageous marriage to restore their fortunes. I witnessed firsthand the fickle nature of such arrangements, she replied, thinking of her father's desperate attempts to secure her a wealthy husband before his death. I would rather earn my bread honestly than sell myself dishonestly. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Your principles do you credit. However, your deception places us both in an awkward position. Were it to become known that I employed an unmarried lady of noble birth in such a capacity. I understand, Penelope rose, resignation in every line of her body. I shall pack my belongings immediately. That will not be necessary, the Duke said, surprising her. My children are flourishing under your care. I have no wish to disrupt their education. Hope fluttered cautiously in her chest. You would allow me to remain? Under certain conditions, he replied. Your true identity must remain our secret. You will continue as Miss James to the household, but in private correspondence regarding the children's education, you will use your true name. This arrangement protects both your reputation and mine. Relief washed over Penelope like a warm tide. You are most generous, Your Grace. Not generous. Practical. His gaze lingered on her face. And perhaps, curious. The Lady Penelope I remember from London ballrooms bears little resemblance to the composed, dedicated governess who has won my children's hearts. Adversity is a most effective teacher, she replied softly. Something shifted in his expression, a fleeting vulnerability that vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. Indeed it is, my lady. Indeed it is. Autumn deepened into winter, and with it, the nature of Penelope's position at Thornfield evolved in subtle, unexpected ways. The Duke, having returned permanently from London, took an increasing interest in his children's education. His presence in the schoolroom became a regular occurrence, ostensibly to observe their progress but inevitably resulting in spirited debates with their governess on literature, philosophy, and modern educational theory. Rousseau's methods are entirely too permissive, Penelope argued one December afternoon as they walked the length of the portrait gallery, the children having been dismissed for their afternoon exercise. Children require structure and clear expectations to thrive. Yet too rigid an approach stifles the natural curiosity that fuels true learning, the Duke countered, his eyes alight with the pleasure of intellectual sparring. Surely your own experiences confirm this? Your understanding of mathematics far exceeds what is typically taught to young ladies. Penelope smiled despite herself. My father believed daughters should be educated as thoroughly as sons. It was his one progressive quality. A man ahead of his time, the Duke observed, pausing before a portrait of his late wife, a delicate blonde beauty whose gentle features were mirrored in young Sophia. You must miss her greatly, Penelope said softly. Eleanor was everything society values in a duchess, gentle, accommodating, unfailingly proper. His voice held an odd detachment. Ours was a marriage arranged by our fathers when we were scarcely more than children ourselves. But not a love match, Penelope ventured, immediately regretting her boldness. The Duke's expression remained contemplative rather than offended. We shared affection and respect, which is more than many marriages of our station can claim. She gave me 2 beautiful children before childbirth took her from us. He turned to Penelope, his gaze direct. And you? Did you love Lord Hartley? The question caught her off guard. I believed I did, she admitted. But now I wonder if I merely loved the security he represented, the continuation of the only life I had known. And now? Having seen beyond the gilded cage of aristocratic expectations, I find myself valuing different qualities than I once did, she replied carefully. Integrity over title. Compassion over wealth. True partnership over advantageous alliance. Something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding that transcended their respective positions. The Duke stepped closer, close enough that Penelope could discern the subtle notes of sandalwood in his cologne. You have changed, Lady Penelope, he murmured. Hardship has not diminished you but refined you, like gold in a crucible. The intimacy of the moment was shattered by the arrival of Mrs. Winters, her expression clearly disapproving at finding the master and governess in such close proximity. A letter has arrived for your grace, she announced, presenting it on a silver salver. From Lady Catherine Blackmore. Most urgent, according to her footman. The Duke's face closed like a book snapping shut. Thank you, Mrs. Winters. Miss James, we shall continue our discussion of educational methods tomorrow. Penelope recognized the name immediately, Lady Catherine Blackmore, the widowed countess whose pursuit of the Duke had been London's favourite gossip before Penelope's own fall from grace. The realization stung more sharply than she cared to admit. Of course, Your Grace, she replied with perfect composure, retreating behind the safety of her governess persona. I shall prepare additional reading on the subject. As she walked away, Penelope silently chastised herself for the foolish hope that had begun to take root in her heart. Whatever understanding might be growing between them, the Duke of Westmoreland moved in worlds she could no longer access. The sooner she remembered that immutable fact, the safer her heart would remain. Lady Catherine Blackmore's arrival at Thornfield the following week was heralded by an entourage befitting a royal visit rather than a casual social call. For carriages, 14 trunks, and a lady's maid whose haughty demeanour rivaled her mistress's swept into the manor, disrupting the peaceful routine Penelope had established. She intends to stay through Christmas, young Edward confided to Penelope during their Latin lesson. Mrs. Winters has prepared the blue suite for her. That's where honoured guests always stay. I see, Penelope replied neutrally, though her heart sank at the news. Now, let us return to your conjugations, my lord. Despite her best efforts to remain invisible, Penelope found herself increasingly in Lady Catherine's path. The Countess, a statuesque beauty of 30 with raven hair and calculating blue eyes, seemed determined to assess every aspect of the children's upbringing, particularly their governess. Miss James, Lady Catherine drawled during an unexpected visit to the schoolroom. I understand you previously served the Harrington family. Curious that Lady Harrington never mentioned you when we last met at Almack's. Perhaps I did not merit mention, my lady, Penelope replied, keeping her eyes downcast as she gathered the children's books. I served them only briefly. Lady Catherine circled the schoolroom like a predator assessing its territory. You have remarkably refined manners for a governess. Almost as if you were raised in better circumstances. The insinuation hung in the air between them. Penelope felt a cold trickle of fear down her spine. I was fortunate in my early education, my lady, she offered carefully. Indeed. Lady Catherine's smile never reached her eyes. So fortunate that I find myself wondering about your background. There's something oddly familiar about you, Miss James. Have we perhaps met before?" Before Penelope could formulate a safe response, the Duke appeared in the doorway, his expression darkening as he observed the scene. "Catherine, I believe we agreed you would join me for a ride this afternoon," he said, his tone pleasant but underlined with steel. "The children's lesson should not be interrupted." Lady Catherine's smile transformed instantly into one of coquettish charm. "Ethan, darling, I was merely acquainting myself with the children's daily routine. As their future mother, I naturally take an interest." The casual declaration struck Penelope like a physical blow. She busied herself with the geography maps, desperate to hide her reaction. "You presume a great deal, Catherine," the Duke replied, his voice carefully controlled. "Come, the horses await." As they departed, Penelope caught the Duke casting a brief, inscrutable glance in her direction. That evening, a note arrived in her chambers, written in his distinctive hand, "Lady P. I request your presence in the library at 11 o'clock, after the household has retired. A matter of some importance requires discussion." Oh. The cryptic summons left Penelope in turmoil. Propriety dictated she refuse such a meeting, yet curiosity and concern compelled her compliance. At the appointed hour, she made her way through the darkened corridors to the library, her single candle casting elongated shadows on the paneled walls. The Duke stood before the fireplace, his formal evening attire exchanged for a more casual dressing gown and trousers. The informality of his appearance made the meeting feel even more improper. "You came," he said simply, his relief evident. "Your note suggested urgency," Penelope replied, remaining near the door. "Is something amiss with the children?" "The children are well," he assured her, gesturing toward a chair. "Please, be seated. What I have to say concerns your position here, and your safety." Alarm coursed through her. Has Lady Catherine discovered my identity? She suspects something is amiss, the Duke confirmed, pacing before the fire. Catherine possesses an unfortunate combination of intuition and determination. She is also desperately seeking a husband of appropriate rank and fortune. And she has set her sights on you, Penelope concluded softly. Her comment about being the children's future mother was not mere presumption. The Duke's laugh held no humor. "Catherine has decided we shall marry. The fact that I have not proposed is, to her mind, a mere technicality to be overcome." "I see." Penelope folded her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "And this concerns me because she perceives you as an obstacle," he said bluntly, coming to stand before her. "Not as a governess, but as a woman who holds my attention and respect." The implication hung between them, too significant to be dismissed, too delicate to be acknowledged directly. "If she discovers who you truly are," the Duke continued, "she will use the information to destroy both your reputation and mine. The scandal would be considerable." Penelope rose, unable to remain still under the weight of his gaze. "Then I must leave Thornfield immediately. Tonight, if possible." "No." The single word held such conviction that Penelope turned to face him. Running will only confirm her suspicions. "I have a different proposal." "Proposal," she echoed, the word uncomfortably laden with meaning. "We must alter the narrative Catherine believes she has uncovered," he explained. "I have sent for my sister, the Marchioness of Claremont, to join us for Christmas. Upon her arrival, we will announce that you are her distant cousin, fallen on hard times, whom she placed in my household as governess to avoid the indignity of seeking employment through agencies. A noble relation in reduced circumstances rather than an impostor," Penelope mused, considering the plan. "It would explain my manners and education." "Precisely." The Duke stepped closer, his expression earnest. "Margaret arrives in 3 days. Until then, we must ensure Catherine has no opportunity to question you further." "And afterwards? Will this deception truly be enough to satisfy her?" "It buys us time," he said simply. "Time to determine a more permanent solution." The ambiguity of his statement sent a flutter of uncertain hope through Penelope's chest, a hope she dared not examine too closely. "Thank you for your protection, Your Grace," she said formally, retreating behind the safety of propriety. "I shall do my part to maintain this new narrative." His hand caught hers as she turned to leave, the warmth of his fingers closing over the ring she still wore. "Penelope," he said softly, using her given name for the first time. "There is more between us than mere protection. You must know that." Her heart thundered in her ears. "What exists between us is impossible," she whispered. "You are a duke. I am a ruined woman masquerading as a governess. Are titles and fortune truly so important to you still?" he challenged. "Not to me," she replied, finding courage in honesty. "But to the world we inhabit, they are everything. Your children deserve better than a stepmother tainted by scandal." "My children deserve happiness," he countered, "as do I." "As do you." He released her hand with obvious reluctance. "We will continue this discussion after Margaret arrives. Until then, be careful around Catherine." Penelope nodded, unable to trust her voice for a proper response. As she slipped from the library, her mind raced with equal measures of hope and fear. Whatever his intentions, the Duke's interest in her well-being had crossed the boundaries of mere employer and employee. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. The Marchioness of Claremont arrived amid a flurry of snow 2 days before Christmas, her ebullient personality immediately warming the sombre halls of Thornfield. Lady Margaret Oakley Preston bore a striking resemblance to her brother, sharing the same decisive grey eyes and forthright manner. "So you are the mysterious Miss James who has captivated my niece and nephew," she declared upon being introduced to Penelope in the drawing-room. "Ethan's letters have mentioned your excellent influence on the children." Penelope curtsied, acutely aware of Lady Catherine's scrutiny from the settee opposite. "Your ladyship is most kind." "Nonsense," the Marchioness replied with a wave of her gloved hand. "I merely state facts. Though I must say, cousin, you appear much recovered from your recent trials." The casual reference to their supposed familial connection was delivered with such natural conviction that even Penelope momentarily believed it. Lady Catherine's gaze sharpened like a hawk spotting prey. "Cousin," she repeated, her voice edged with suspicion. "How fascinating that you never mentioned this connection, Miss James." "A distant relation through my mother's family," the Marchioness explained smoothly before Penelope could respond. "When I learned of her circumstances after her father's passing, I naturally sought to assist her without drawing undue attention to her reduced situation. Pride can be such a barrier to accepting necessary help, wouldn't you agree, Lady Catherine?" The subtle reprimand was not lost on the Countess, whose smile tightened perceptibly. "How charitable of you, Lady Claremont! And how fortunate that your brother had need of a governess at precisely that moment." "Providence works in mysterious ways," the Duke interjected, his expression betraying nothing of the deception. "Margaret has always had a talent for solving multiple problems with a single solution." The children's entrance spared Penelope further scrutiny as they rushed to greet their beloved aunt. As the family gathering shifted its focus, Penelope caught the Duke's eye across the room. His slight nod conveyed both reassurance and caution. The first stage of their plan had succeeded, but Lady Catherine remained unconvinced. Later that evening, as Penelope helped Lady Sophia prepare a Christmas recitation for the family gathering, the Marchioness appeared in the nursery doorway. "Miss James, might I borrow you for a moment?" I have brought some items from London that might suit you better than your current attire." In the privacy of the Marchioness's chambers, Lady Margaret's warm demeanour remained unchanged, but her words were direct and purposeful. "My brother has explained your true circumstances," she said, laying out several gowns of fine quality yet modest design. "Lady Penelope Jameson. I danced with your father at my own coming-out ball, you know." Penelope's composure faltered. "Your ladyship must think most poorly of me." "On the contrary," Lady Margaret replied, surprising her. "I find your resourcefulness admirable. Many women of our class would sooner die than earn their bread honestly. You are not shocked by the deception?" "My dear girl, I have lived at court long enough to recognize that deception is sometimes necessary for survival." She selected a forest green gown with minimal ornamentation. "This should suit our Christmas Eve dinner. As my cousin, you will join the family rather than dining with the servants." Penelope stared at the gown in confusion. "Join the family? But surely that would only inflame Lady Catherine's suspicions." "Precisely the opposite," the Marchioness countered with a knowing smile. "By acknowledging you openly as a relation, however distant, we remove the air of mystery that fuels her curiosity. Besides, it allows Ethan to interact with you publicly without impropriety." Heat rose to Penelope's cheeks. "I'm not certain what you mean, your ladyship." Lady Margaret's laugh was warm and knowing. "My brother has written to me weekly since your arrival at Thornfield. For the past month, every letter has mentioned a Miss James with increasing frequency and detail. I have not seen him so animated since before Eleanor's passing." "His Grace has been most kind to me," Penelope demurred, though her heart quickened at the implication. "Kindness is not what radiates from him when he looks at you," Lady Margaret observed shrewdly. "But we shall speak no more of that for now. Try on this gown, and let us see what alterations might be needed before tomorrow evening." As Penelope slipped into the beautiful garment, a forgotten feeling of belonging washed over her. For months, she had suppressed every aspect of her true self, burying Lady Penelope beneath Miss James's modest demeanour. Now, with the Marchioness's unexpected alliance, the boundaries between her past and present selves began to blur. "Perfect," Lady Margaret declared, appraising her with satisfaction. "Simple enough to befit your supposed circumstances, yet elegant enough to honour your true breeding. Catherine will be furious." "Is that wise?" Penelope ventured hesitantly. The Marchioness's smile turned mischievous. "My dear, a cornered opponent is a dangerous one, but a jealous woman is predictable. Better to know the direction from which the attack will come." The wisdom of this strategy became apparent at Christmas Eve dinner. Seated at the family table in her borrowed finery, Penelope found herself the object of Lady Catherine's thinly veiled hostility and the Duke's undisguised admiration. Each time their eyes met across the candlelit table, something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding and possibility that both terrified and exhilarated her. "Miss James plays the pianoforte beautifully," young Sophia announced as the party moved to the drawing-room after dinner. "She has been teaching me a Christmas carol to surprise you, father." "Indeed," the Duke replied, his expression warming. "Then we must hear both teacher and pupil perform." Despite Lady Catherine's attempt to divert attention by suggesting charades instead, Penelope soon found herself seated at the elegant instrument, her fingers moving with practiced grace across the keys as Sophia's sweet, clear voice filled the room with the holly and the ivy. When they finished, the genuine applause from the family brought a flush of pleasure to Penelope's cheeks. "I had no idea governesses received such accomplished musical training," Lady Catherine remarked, the barb clear beneath her honeyed tone. "One might almost mistake you for a lady of quality, Miss James." "Good breeding reveals itself even in reduced circumstances," the Marchioness interjected smoothly. My cousin's father ensured she received every advantage before misfortune befell their family. How interesting, Lady Catherine persisted, moving to stand beside the pianoforte. And what misfortune was that, precisely? I confess myself curious about your background, Miss James. Before Penelope could formulate a response, Lady Catherine's hand shot out to grasp her right wrist, turning it to reveal the ring she still wore despite all caution. What a curious piece. A family crest, is it not? I don't recognize the design as belonging to any branch of Lady Claremont's family. The room fell silent. Penelope felt the blood drain from her face as Lady Catherine's triumphant smile confirmed her worst fears. The Countess had recognized the Jameson crest. It appears our governess has been less than forthcoming about her heritage, Lady Catherine announced, her voice carrying the practiced projection of a woman accustomed to commanding ballrooms. This ring bears the crest of the Earl of Jameson, does it not? A curious possession for a distant relation of the Oakley family. The Duke rose from his chair, his expression dangerously controlled. Catherine, you forget yourself. Do I? Or is it Miss James who has forgotten her true identity? Lady Catherine's eyes glittered with malicious victory. Or should I say, Lady Penelope Jameson, the disgraced daughter who vanished from London society after her father's death, left her penniless and her fiancé abandoned her. Gasps echoed through the room. Young Edward looked between his father and governess in confusion, while Sophia pressed closer to Penelope's side in a gesture of protective loyalty. Is this true? Edward demanded of his father. Is Miss James really a lady? In that crystallizing moment, Penelope realized the futility of further deception. Drawing herself up with the dignity that had been her birthright, she faced Lady Catherine directly. You are correct, Lady Catherine. I am indeed Penelope Jameson. Her voice gained strength with each word. When my father died, his creditors took everything. The scandal of our financial ruin destroyed my prospects and my standing. Rather than seek charity or an advantageous marriage based on false pretenses, I chose to support myself through honest work. She turned to the Duke, her heart in her eyes. I deceived you and your family about my identity, Your Grace, and for that, I can only offer my profound apology. My affection for your children and my dedication to their education has been entirely genuine. I will, of course, leave Thornfield immediately. The Duke crossed the room in several long strides, positioning himself between Penelope and Lady Catherine. You will do no such thing, he stated firmly, his gaze never leaving Penelope's face. You have nothing to apologize for. Ethan! Lady Catherine gasped. Surely you cannot mean to retain her services now that her deception has been exposed. Think of the scandal. I am thinking of my children's welfare, he replied, though his eyes conveyed a message meant only for Penelope. And of what truly matters in this world. He turned to address the room at large. Lady Penelope's presence in my household as governess was indeed arranged by my sister, who sought to provide her with respectable employment during a difficult time. The decision to maintain discretion about her true identity was mine, to protect her from precisely the kind of malicious gossip that has followed her since her father's passing. The smooth lie, delivered with such conviction, left Penelope momentarily speechless. The Marchioness immediately took up the narrative. Indeed, brother. I believe I mentioned this arrangement in correspondence with several friends in London. Lady Penelope's situation is hardly unprecedented. Many gentlewomen of good family have taken such positions when circumstances required it. Lady Catherine's triumph dissolved into uncertainty as she realized her revelation had not produced the desired effect. But her deception was a necessary protection against precisely the sort of prejudice you have just displayed, the Duke interrupted coldly. I believe this evening's entertainment has concluded. Margaret, would you escort the children to the nursery? Lady Penelope, please remain. Lady Catherine and I have matters to discuss privately. As the others filed out, Penelope hesitated, torn between obligation to stay and desire to flee. The Duke's gentle touch on her arm decided her. "Please wait for me in the library," he murmured. "This will not take long." 20 minutes later, he joined her there, his expression weary but resolved. "Lady Catherine will be departing for London tomorrow morning," he announced without preamble. She expressed concern about her mother's health, a sudden recollection that apparently required immediate attention. "She will not keep silent about me," Penelope said softly. "By Twelfth Night, all of London will know that Lady Penelope Jameson is employed as your governess." "Let them talk," he replied, moving to stand before her. "Their opinions hold no value to me. But your reputation is of far less concern to me than your happiness." He took her hands in his touch gentle yet firm. "Penelope, these past months have shown me a truth I can no longer deny. The woman who has brought light back into my home, who has nurtured my children's minds and spirits, who challenges me daily with her intelligence and principles, that woman is far more precious to me than any hollow social standing." Penelope's heart stuttered as he lowered himself to one knee before her, still holding her hands. "I had planned a very different conversation for tomorrow, after the Christmas festivities," he admitted ruefully. Catherine merely accelerated the inevitable. "What are you saying?" she whispered, scarcely daring to believe what appeared to be unfolding. "I am saying, Lady Penelope Jameson, that I love you, not the society beauty I once observed from afar, but the woman of courage and integrity I have come to know at Thornfield. I am asking you to make me the happiest of men by consenting to be my wife, my duchess, and the mother my children already adore." Tears blurred her vision as years of belief in her own unworthiness collided with the undeniable truth in his eyes. "The world will say you married beneath you," she protested weakly. "That you were deceived by an adventuress." "The world may say what it wishes," he replied, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek. "I know the truth, that I am the fortunate one to have found a woman of such strength and character. The question remains, Penelope, will you have me?" In that moment, the false beliefs that had defined her existence since her father's death, that love was a luxury for those with fortune and status, that her past dictated her future, that she was unworthy of happiness, crumbled beneath the weight of a greater truth: love, when genuine, transcended the arbitrary boundaries of society. "Yes," she whispered, and then with growing conviction, "Yes, Ethan. I will marry you. I love you." His kiss sealed their betrothal, tender at first, then deepening with the promise of a passion long restrained. When they finally parted, both breathless, he smiled down at her with such undisguised joy that Penelope felt her heart might burst with answering happiness. "I believe this ring," he said, lifting her right hand where her mother's ring still gleamed, "belongs on your other hand now. A symbol not of what you lost, but of what you found, your true self, worthy of love despite all society's judgments." As he slipped the ring onto her left hand, Penelope felt the final piece of her fragmented identity slide into place. She was neither the privileged Lady Penelope of her past nor the humble Miss James of her recent disguise, but something new, a woman defined not by social standing or others' perceptions, but by her own strength, choices, and capacity for love. Spring arrived at Thornfield with a riot of crocuses and daffodils that mirrored the renewed life within the manor's ancient walls. The Duke and Duchess of Westmoreland stood arm in arm on the terrace, watching Edward and Sophia race across the greening lawn with their Aunt Margaret. "The London papers still mention our marriage at least once a fortnight," Penelope remarked, leaning comfortably against her husband's shoulder. "Yesterday's Gazette suggested I had orchestrated our entire romance by deliberately seeking employment in your household." Ethan laughed, the sound rich with contentment. "And did you?" One does wonder at the extraordinary coincidence that placed the perfect Duchess directly under my nose when I wasn't looking for one. Perfect! She arched an eyebrow at him. The scandal of our marriage nearly caused Lady Harrington to faint at last week's reception. Precisely why you are perfect, he countered, drawing her closer. Any woman who can silence that particular gossip with nothing but a well-timed literary reference deserves a duchess's coronet. Penelope's laugh joined his on the spring breeze. I had excellent motivation to learn dignity in adversity, she admitted. Though I never imagined it would lead me here. I did, Ethan replied, his expression turning serious as he gazed down at her. From the moment I recognized that ring, I knew you were meant to be here, and not as a governess, but as the heart of this home. Her hand moved instinctively to her still flat abdomen, where their first child had just begun to make its presence known. Some secrets, she had learned, were worth keeping until the perfect moment for their revelation. Speaking of hearts, she began, guiding his hand to rest beside hers, I believe Thornfield may need to prepare for an additional Oakley by autumn. The dawning joy in his eyes confirmed what Penelope had come to understand in the month since their Christmas Eve betrothal. True identity was not found in titles or social standing, but in being genuinely known and loved, ring, reputation, and all.